Modern anti-Mormon publications have also included attacks on Joseph Smith's character. In recent years, the attacks have particularly focused on the theme of Joseph Smith as a treasure seeker who used folk magic. Joseph Smith has been described as, quote, a man who pretended to discover for a fee where buried treasure was located, end quote. And the Smith family, quote, was given to dabbling in the mysteries of divination, glass-looking, peepstoning, and abrak, end quote. We have here an example from the Evangel. What I'll do is just continue with the reading and let you look at the overhead, so we'll never get done. So hopefully you can tell what it is from the source there. Of even more significance has been the attempt to portray Joseph Smith as a necromancer using black magic. While William Palmer's description of Smith sacrificing a goat in order to appease evil spirits guarding buried treasure was not by happenstance. The practice of black magic is akin to devil worship. Indeed, satanic rituals involve animal sacrifice, and a goat's head is symbolic of a pentagram, which is referred to as, quote, the consummate symbol of Satan, end quote. William J. Schneblin, whose shady past and questionable activity should cause concern to any discerning reader, has been particularly outspoken in his accusations of Joseph Smith's involvement in the occult. Furthermore, Schneblin's sensationalistic pamphlets, Mormonism's Temple of Doom and Whited Sepulchres, claim the temple ceremonies to have their foundation in witchcraft and masonry. Not all anti-Mormon publications come from ministries and other openly antagonistic publishers like Triple J Publications, which published Schneblin's works. In fact, there is a very recent example of an anti-Mormon work published by Doubleday, a large mainstream publisher. John Krakauer's Under the Banner of Heaven, A Story of Violent Faith, which borrows heavily from polemical works on Mormonism, picks up on the theme of Joseph Smith's treasure hunting and folk magic. For example, he describes Smith's scrying and treasure hunting, stating, quote, soon his necromantic skills were sufficiently in demand that he was able to command respectable fees to find buried treasure for property owners, end quote. However, Krakauer does not stop there. In relating the birth of Mormonism in upstate New York, he writes, quote, Joseph's flirtation with folk magic as a young man had a direct and unmistakable bearing on the religion he would soon usher forth, end quote. In fact, in introducing Moroni's original visit, Krakauer continues, quote, peepstones and black magic would again loom large in Joseph's life, end quote. Now, while the focus of this paper is not Krakauer's book, his background, biases, and poor scholarship cannot go unnoticed as an example of anti-Mormonism masquerading as a scholarly work or a book which will supposedly allow readers a glimpse at the true history, doctrines, and nature of Mormonism. Furthermore, his book boils down to nothing more than a regurgitation of old anti-Mormon themes such as Joseph Smith's character, Mormon polygamy, Danites, the Mountain Meadows Massacre, and other so-called problematic areas of Mormon history. Krakauer catapulted the fame of the publication of Into Thin Air, a cathartic biographical account of climbing Mount Everest. He is an excellent writer and has a very good gift for being able to portray things in a colorful and fascinating way. In fact, practically all of his previous works have dealt with extreme behavior and outdoor pursuits and have been very, very popular because of his gift for writing. Thus, it was surprising a man of his background, especially given the fact he admits being raised an atheist, would take on such a complex subject that had nothing to do with mountains. Now, Krakauer, although he's described as being a very gifted writer, he is also described as being a one-sided journalist and viewing such religious actions as wearing sacred garments as, quote, freakishness rather than fervor, end quote, and concluding that the book, quote, provides more voyeuristic astonishment than curiosity or understanding. Unsurprisingly, the LDS Church has reacted quickly and negatively to Krakauer's book. He, in turn, has publicly vacillated between anger and belligerency and hurt and puzzlement.
In a Salt Lake Tribune editorial, he stated he was saddened that the church had, quote, elected to regard his book in such a reductionist light, end quote. Krakauer later commented how hurt he was about the church's negative reaction and then said, I hope people don't think this is an anti-Mormon book. Now, John Krakauer's denials of being an anti-Mormon fly in the face of his comments as well as his book signing schedule. On Krakauer's own webpage, his book signing and speaking engagements included not only the usual bookstores, but also the First Parish of Cambridge Church, Unity Church, First Congregational Church, and Unity Temple on the Plaza. These are churches located in various parts of the country. Either Krakauer is knowingly playing to the critics of the church in order to sell more books, or he truly has been, as some people have suggested, into thin air a little too often. Either way, Krakauer not only focuses on Joseph Smith's folk magic and treasure hunting, but also on the ever-popular theme of Smith's supposed sexual impropriety by recounting the same old stories and accusing Joseph Smith of sexual recklessness. However, Krakauer certainly is not alone with his accusations, most of which go back to the early days of the church. Stories accusing Joseph Smith of adultery and polygamy began to circulate while he was still alive and became even more numerous after his death. For example, in one of the editions of Gerald and Sandra Tanner's Salt Lake City Messenger, in an article titled Joseph Smith and Women, he is accused of having a sexual problem in that, quote, he was unsatisfied living with just one wife, end quote. This sexual problem, according to the Tanners, led him to introduce plural marriage. Furthermore, the article emphasized Smith married several teenage women and that, quote, the system of polygamy he set up was very detrimental to young women and children, end quote. While Joseph Smith was and continues to be the main target of stories of sexual impropriety, his prophetic successors, as well as the regular membership, have also been the focus of tales describing licentious activity. The non-Mormon obsession with Mormon sexual mores is found in three distinct forms, all of which merge to a degree one with another. These three forms are the temple ceremony and supposed sexual activity therein. Plural marriage entails of rape and bondage, and the idea of Mormon immorality as a result of teachings and experiences. The juxtaposing of sexual license in the temple ceremony began with the first known expose on the Mormon temple. This was published by a husband and wife team, Increase and Maria Van Dusen. In 1847, they published a pamphlet concerning the inner workings of the Nauvoo temple. Between 1847 and 1852, the Van Dusens published at least 7 pamphlets on Mormonism and the temple ceremony. The tracts varied little in their content from each other. All of them claimed to disclose the deep, dark secrets of Mormonism. In A Dialogue Between Adam and Eve, the Lord and the Devil, called The Endowment, the underlying message was the thinly veiled eroticism of the temple ceremony. According to the tract, the first step taken in the ceremony was for the couple to be separated, undressed, and washed and anointed all over their body. In explaining this part of the ceremony, Increase wrote, there is a variety of ceremony going on in this room, some of rather too delicate a nature to speak of, as this work is designed to be read by all classes of both sex, end quote. This vague reference left the impression of lascivious behavior on the part of the Mormons. Van Dusen also mentioned the spiritual life doctrine, and by 1852, the underlying message of sexuality had become blatant. The cover of the tract portrays a man pointing to a woman draped provocatively in some robes. The woman's legs and left breast are bare. With the text is found another illustration entitled Bridal Couch of the Spiritual Wife. This pictures a woman reclining on a couch with a robe covering only the lower half of her body. Other early anti-Mormon writers used the Van Dusen's theme of sexual impropriety in the temple. In Mormonism Exposed, John Bowes gave an interesting discussion concerning the temple ceremony and the plurality of wives, under the titillating title, Hidden Orgies of Mormonism Practiced in the Nauvoo Temple. Bowes described